This is ogforums.com Real Talk, an unfiltered, independent perspective on Acumatica Cloud ERP. My name is Tim Rodman, and I want to mention three things in this pre-recorded intro before we get started. First, thank you to our sponsors. Our first sponsor is Paya. Paya offers Acumatica users a suite of industry-leading payment orchestration tools. Far beyond native Acumatica payments, Paya enables EMV NFC terminals for countersale. They offer a frictionless customer portal through their click-to-pay solution, and they support most e-commerce platforms and point-of-sale solutions used with Acumatica, such as One Retail and AcuPOS. And best of all, omni-channel reconciliation is available for all their solutions. Our second sponsor is DataSelf. DataSelf Analytics is a revolutionary reporting solution that enables organizations to make the most informed decisions faster and easier than ever. It uniquely simplifies business intelligence, empowers anyone to build and access dashboards, and delivers critical business insight when and where you need it. Our third sponsor is Aldrich Web Solutions. Are you a distributor using Acumatica, yet struggling with an e-commerce fit? US-based Aldrich Web Solutions out of Marion, Illinois, has 2 decades of experience helping distributors find success online. Our team of experts built the integration, creating websites that work effortlessly with Acumatica. With our reputation for swift customer service and meticulous attention to detail, we are the perfect fit for distributors needing online solutions. Please take a minute to support this podcast by clicking each one of the sponsor banners located at augforums.com/sponsors. Our sponsors track clicks, and every click helps to support this podcast. The second thing I'd like to mention is that I'm always looking for victims. I mean guests. If you use Acumatica in any capacity, no matter how small, I'd love to talk with you. Check out augforums.com/podcast and click the link near the top of the page to learn more about being a guest on the podcast. Third and finally, I'd love to see you listed on my Rolodex. Check out augforums.com/Rolodex to find out who else is using Acumatica and read the instructions at the top to see how you can add yourself to the list. All right, that's it for the pre-recorded intro. Let's get started. Today is Friday, March 22nd, 2024, and this is episode number 131. You can find related links on the episode page at augforums.com/episode 131. Today, I'm talking with Mitch Knapke and Kurt Wasty about their implementation of Acumatica, and I know absolutely nothing except the company is called Prairie Farms and they deal with eggs, and it sounded interesting, so we're going to talk about it. Mitch and Kurt, thanks for coming on today.
Thanks for having us, Tim. Looking forward to it.
So, Kurt, I was going back. Mitch. Kurt, I just met a few minutes ago. Mitch and I have exchanged emails in the past. I was going back through our emails to remind myself what details we had talked about. You were in the middle of an implementation when we first started emailing. You have since gone live, but before we talk about your going live, maybe you could talk to us about the company, the challenges you've had in the past, and why you were even looking to implement a new ERP system.
Yeah, we'll see how far back we want to go, but so it's Prairie Star Farms. It's a collection of egg farms. Prior to 2011, it was all kind of contract farming. So there was, 2 farms at that time that were working with a sales and a marketing group, right? That's kind of contract farming. They don't have any of the front end. They're just responsible for for producing eggs. So a fairly young company if we look at the egg industry. Different industries may not be, but yeah, they decided to kind of do the sales marketing front end in 2011. Grew from 2 farms to 5, 6, and now we're at 7 farms. But a lot of that initially was manual, as you can imagine. I don't think farming is considered a high-tech industry by any means, but implemented Sage 100. Oh, I was before my time of starting, but that could have been maybe 7 or 8 years ago, and just really felt like the Sage 100 was challenging to get data in and out and speed, and also the cloud aspect of it, right? Going through some of the COVID challenges and having people work from home. We were doing some remote desktop hosting type of stuff, but just wasn't a great solution for us, and kind of growing and wanting to do more. So yeah, that was early 2023. Decided to kind of take a look at some other systems, and implemented Acumatica in October of last year. So.
And is the business a co-op model, or what's the legal setup for it?
Yeah, it's more of an owner-operator model. So the initial 2 farms kind of have ownership in all of them, but we bring on a kind of local partner as far as that goes to kind of have some ownership in running the growth that we've had. And yeah, I mean, it's worked out well, right? Whether you do profit sharing or have some ownership, it's been a nice model for us.
And so is it kind of like you take care of the business side, so the farm just focuses on the farm side of things? Is that kind of the general idea?
Correct. Yeah, they're really focused on the farm and producing stuff, and we will help them on the order side, the accounting side, the invoicing side, right, and any quality side. We're kind of there as a support mechanism, but yeah, they're kind of there to run the day-to-day side of it.
And you're located, I think you're in Ohio. Am I right? Just like I am, or where are you? You're both in a conference room. Where are you?
Yeah, we are in Ohio. We're kind of Midwest Ohio. We're really close to the Indiana border. Actually, 3 of our farms are over in Indiana, so we're an hour north of Dayton, 2 hours south of Toledo. We're right there on the border. So.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, not too far from me. Well, cool. Maybe we could. So I think when we had exchanged emails originally, you were in the typical trying to figure things out in implementation mode. Can you highlight maybe some of the interesting things you had to deal with and how you solved them, either with a customization, an ISV product, or just clever use of Acumatica?
I try to think back to implementation, right? It's like where's time gone, and we've learned a lot from that. But since we're in a little unique situation where we're not like, I would say like one by one orders. Like right now, the farm isn't even really touching the system as that goes, right? So as an office, we're looking at ways to kind of batch process stuff, get them through the system fairly quickly, if that makes sense. So we are using SPS kind of for EDI, and then we also use like a Velixo right back to, we have some customers who are not on the EDI, but if they send in 10 or 15 orders, we want to get those into the system quickly, right? So I think back to kind of that order workflow and how to set things up. We are farming, but it's not your typical production. So we're using distribution. We elected to go with kits just to track more on the carton side, right? Because that's our material piece, if you will. But we didn't have a clever idea or way to kind of put the production planning into the system, just because of the unique nature of the egg farming, if you will, right? Whether we downsize extra large into large, there's different things that we do that just didn't feel great for the manufacturing or putting that production planning into Acumatica. Now we may revisit that down the road, but that's kind of was where we started.
So you're not doing the manufacturing edition, you're doing kits to handle your light manufacturing needs, at least as far as Acumatica is concerned.
Yes, that is correct. We're actually using non-stop kits because we didn't want to have to necessarily like assemble them, I think, and there were some other things, but there was some kinks in implementation as far as the non-stop kits. We went back and forth on whether to use like the SO workflow or just to invoice our customers. But yeah, I know it's working. But maybe you can comment on that, Kurt. Like we thought it was a bug at first, but I think it was how the system was set up on the nonstop.
Yeah, so I think when we went through the implementation process, about a month prior to go live, we made a poor decision to upgrade from 2022 R2 to 2023 R1. I might be a little bit wrong on what versions we went from and to, but a month prior to implementation, we changed from the IN order type to the SO order type, and there was a bug with how nonstop kits were treated between those versions. So we did a lot of scrambling in the last hour to tailor our approach, because we did not want to roll back on what version we were going to operate on. So we had to, in the last 5 weeks, take a new approach, and we changed to the SO order type, which is fine. It was very nerve-wracking and stressful in the last couple of weeks, but once we've gone live, it's worked out very well for us.
Yeah, and we say bug, but I think some of this is just like understanding how Acumatica wanted to use kits versus how we wanted to use it, right? As you learn more on what the intent is, and if I remember right, we're using warehouses for the farms, so sometimes we will, we'll assign an order to a farm, and then we'll switch it to another farm based on their capacity that's coming out of the farms, and that was, for some reason, was throwing an error, and if you deleted the line and added it back, but it was more of an inconvenience. There was some workarounds, but yeah, we kind of went back with that upgrade. Circling back to that implementation kind of advice or thoughts, I know like unit of measures was one thing that we switched at the 11th hour as well.
Actually, one sec. Before you go to units of measure, I want to highlight two things there. So one is, changing versions in the middle of implementation. Like, it sounds like it worked out well for you. You didn't want to go back. It was just a stressful time. And I think, the key point there is just recognize that things might not work the same when you change versions, right? Just knowing that going into that. So that's a thing to highlight. Lesson learned there, or you probably knew it going into it, right? It's just it's like setting expectations for people, right? And then the second thing, that I just lost. Oh no, there was a second thing I wanted to highlight, but I like to kind of pull out those things.
What is your experience with the kits, Tim? I'm curious, and kind of have people they like that functionality, or you see that used otherwhere, or other people have kind of their issues with them or concerns, or.
Yeah, because I focus on reporting now, I haven't gotten into the weeds with kits in a while. I did just though remember my second thing, and that is, and it's kind of related to your kits thing. You use the word bug, right? And to you, it is a bug. And I think the key, there's a skill to getting through Acumatica support and getting your thing marked as a bug, right? Because you want it to be a bug so it'll get fixed. The worst is when they come back and they say, well, it's working as designed. And so there's a skill to like navigating through there, and it's almost like lobbying Congress to get them to, mark it as a bug. And I don't know, did you even try that route, or you just realized that just changed, the way it works changed?
I think we were able to get it logged, with our reseller, they were able to get it logged, but I don't think there was ever a resolution, right? So I think it was one of those where they logged it, but it probably was not high on a lot of people that were using the system the way that we were, right? But who knows? I mean, one of these, the upgrades could have addressed the issue, and it could be perfectly fine. We haven't upgraded since then, and
it took us 2 or 3 weeks to get the issue logged, if you will. We had no timeline on the resolution from Acumatica and the bar. We were 6 weeks from implementation, so the best resolution for us was to just kind of change paths, and we went with the SO order type. It's a little inconvenient on how you have to do some things, but we've navigated through that, and we launched on time. It's working well.
So you don't even know for sure if Acumatica marked it as a bug. Getting it logged, yeah, you got the support case open, but you don't know if it's still in support or if it made over to engineering, which to me is the key to know whether it truly got accepted as a bug.
That's right.
Yeah, I would say our reseller probably understands that path more. Like, we didn't have that direct relationship, right? So, yeah, I mean, what we were told was they acknowledged it was an issue, but I don't know if it ever was made it to engineering, right?
Okay. Yeah, and there's a million things like this, right? So it's not like, oh no, that's terrible. It's just, it's just good to be aware of these kind of things. All right, so then you're about to go to unit of measure before I cut you off. Go ahead. I'll let you pick that back up.
Yeah, well, this is a little bit of egg talk here, if you will, but we talk dozens a lot, right? And everything goes off of that. But we initially had set up thinking cases, because we don't sell anything less than a case, right? If you can imagine, in our world, we don't have customers coming up buying stuff by the dozen. It's a 5 dozen case or 15 dozen case. So we sort of started there, and then kind of as we got in this and our reporting, it's like, gosh, it would be really nice to be able to just compare by dozen. Some of our customers will price by dozen, right? So I think we lucked out in the 11th hour, and that would just be one thing. There's a few of those things in the system that, before you get into this implementation phase, just to kind of like have a session on unit of measure. I think kind of the chart of accounts and how the maybe sub accounts and some of the features there, that would be really good just to have those up front before you get into much of that conversation. And we did feel like there was kind of a waiting period with our reseller where we felt like we were kind of sitting on our hands, like, hey, we're like anxious, ready to go. We know this is a good time, have an excited team. I wish, unit of measures, we would have spent some time on the chart of accounts and kind of how that is. And then also just kind of cleaning up our data, right? Whether that's items or classes, that type of stuff, we probably could have done before getting into the software at all, right? Just with, checking out some YouTube videos or having a quick training and kind of wrestle through those decisions. We felt like, we want to get in the system, get our hands on the software, but probably didn't even need that for those 3 conversations.
Yeah, no, good point. Where did you land on the units of measure? I'm curious. And let's do some egg talk here. You mentioned dozens, you mentioned cases. Is it just those 2? So give me what's your base unit of measure? First of all, I got all sorts of questions. So is it the same base unit of measure for all of your items? Maybe I'll just start there.
Yeah, so we ended up with a base unit being a dozen. But we also have cases, and then we can also sell by the pallet. We do have some other unit of measures set up on the material side, if you will, right? How we purchase cartons, for example. We have some different unit of measures there. But then it was also fun with the kits, right? Because, we want to figure out, okay, if we sell a pallet of eggs, it's 900 dozen, how many cartons do we use? And then we also have some reusable pallets that we use. So I think we set up some units that we would divide by 900 to, we're using 1/900th of a pallet, which sounds weird, but all the math comes out, and when we run our reports and track stuff, it seems to work. So, but dozens was key for that base quantity, right? I mean, any reports that we do, it's awesome to have that comparison rather than try to leverage that unit of measure table to do some stuff, just how we talk. Now,
So
I wish.
can I ask that? I want to drill into that a little more. So the egg to me is the smallest thing, but to Acumatica the smallest thing is a dozen. Then what's the next up from that? Is it a pallet or there was something in between there?
So we say cases, but we have multiple case sizes, right? So we will do
2.5 dozen, 5 dozen, 7.5 dozen, 12 dozen, 15 dozen,
30 dozen.
So they are sold in, essentially you can think of it as cartons or trays or something put into a box that holds 2.5 dozen, 5 dozen, 7.5 dozen.
So the pallet and the case are the same thing. The case is just case is like a bunch of eggs stacked on top of a pallet, or are they two different things?
So a case is just think of a box, for example, right? So we're going to put 30 dozen eggs in a box, and then we're going to pack 30 of those boxes on a pallet, if that makes sense. Kind of how that ends up configuring and how we ship a lot of stuff.
So is the box a case or?
Yeah, correct. The
okay,
box would be
got it. All right. So the base unit measure then's a dozen. Then the next up from there is a case, and then you put a bunch of cases on a pallet.
correct.
Okay. And then if it's a dozen, like I'm pretty sure I've gone to the store. Maybe this is only Costco that I'm thinking of, where you can get like 18 eggs in a pack instead of 12. Like, how does that work? Or you just don't do that?
No, it'd just be 1.5.
1.5 dozen.
Ah, okay. So you have a decimal quantity on your base unit of measure. Okay, that makes sense. All right. Okay. And that I'm also curious then, how did you do it in Sage 100? What was your base? Was it still a dozen?
I think it was dozen, but I'll be honest, the unit of measures were not set up real well in Sage 100, and we ended up using a customization to kind of figure some things out there. So we had customers that would price by the case and customers that would price by the dozen, and we had a customization to handle that. We did not use the unit of measure functionality within the system.
Gotcha.
So, kind of a workaround, if you will.
Okay. No, it's a great point, especially with eggs. Like nail down the unit of measure before you even touch the software. That conversation, great advice. I like that. Yeah.
We did not. We kind of stumbled across the base order quantity at the last minute. When it came to reporting, that was a lifesaver because we want to report on some sort of common denominator that happened to be base order quantity. When we were setting up units of measure and starting the implementation process, reporting was not really considered, right? You just want to launch and then you figure out the reporting after the fact. So we should have spent 10 times the amount of time we did on unit of measure and base order quantity and figuring out how to report on it. We stumbled across a lot of this stuff. It works really well, but we should have spent a lot more time up front on units of measure.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I'm glad you brought up that base one because I've been working with a company here in Columbus, Ohio that does food distribution. And so they're just a distributor. They bring stuff in from suppliers like you guys, and then they send it out to restaurants. And their base unit is a case for everything. And sometimes they'll break it down into eaches, but it's still the base unit is a case. And that base, exactly what you brought up, the base unit, I forget what the field is called, on the sales order line and on the invoice line. You have both the quantity that you entered and the unit of measure that you entered, but it also stores it behind the scenes in the base. And so that's same thing for them. That's what we report on because it's consistent across all of their products. Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. One thing that we've discovered, and I'm curious if you have a solution for it or not, but we would love to see the total base order quantity at the header level, right? Like it'll give you the total dollar amount, but we have some where we allocate stuff between egg types, and I don't know, maybe this is getting too much into the weeds, but the GI of GI or the sum of GIs, like we still want that, like the line level detail, but it would be awesome to have the total order quantity, total order base quantity in some of those GIs, and we haven't found out an answer to that one, and maybe that's a down the road. thing to figure
No,
out.
weeds are welcome. I love getting into the weeds. That's my whole point of this podcast. I didn't remember that. So it's on SO line, but not on SO order.
Correct. Just
Yeah.
the total base quantity. We've multiple use cases where, it'd be nice to know what percent of the order that line was in our use cases, and you can get that.
I see. Percent of the order.
Yeah.
Interesting. Give me a second. I'm thinking about that. So I haven't had that need at this food service place I was talking about, but because for us it's all about the line, because the line knows the item, it knows the price, the cost, all that. So that's all the slicing and dicing is done there. But yeah, talking about percentage of the total order, I would probably these days I'm throwing SQL at a lot more things. So I would probably create a SQL view for that still takes the lines as the base data set, but groups it by order. So you wind up with a data set that's one row per order, but it does the work to total up the bases on the lines. So with SQL, and actually, you know what? You don't even need SQL for that anymore. What version did you guys say you moved to? Was it 23R1 or 23R2?
23R1.
Okay. So you would need, and actually, I'm sorry, it's 24R1 that you can do subqueries in. It's kind of a new thing in the GI, and it's something I'll add to my generic inquiry course. You might be able to pull it off there. For now, for sure, you can do it with SQL. But basically, you need to create your own data access class that does the work to go in and pull this much. This is audio only, but I have hands that are wider apart, SO lines, and then it needs to group it down so that you only get one row per order. But yeah, you'd be able to do that with probably with the new subquery feature in 24R1, or just by doing a SQL view.
No, that's good. Yeah, we're mainly like put it into Velixo and manipulate stuff, but we like to just hit a button, a refresh button, and it gives us the answer. It's just a little bit more manipulation with Velixo, but yeah, we're getting by. But yeah, we'll look forward to that one for sure.
You brought up Velixo earlier too. I wanted to ask on the orders, when you said some of it's coming through SPS Commerce via EDI. Also, you're doing right back with Velixo. How do those orders that go through Velixo actually come in? Is it by email? Is it by phone? How do they get received?
Yes, it's by email, and we have a variety. So if it's just an Excel spreadsheet, you put it in a format, and then you just kind of copy and paste and write back. But we do have some customers that still PDF orders, right? They have their order form, they send it in. So if it, like I said, if it's 10 orders that week, then we have a kind of a standard order form, Velixo, that we type in the quantities, right? We kind of know what they typically order, just type in the quantities, PO number, delivery date, and then it's, quick 10 orders to get into the system versus, clicking add 10 times and filling out that information. So
just because the screen is slow, right? It's always laggy between clicking buttons, right?
correct, yes.
Yeah, it's easier to do it in Excel because there's no lag time. You're on a desktop application, and then you do the load in one time.
Yeah, and if there's 5 rows per order, right? I mean, you're just the number that you're adding to get those screens, and then the search functionality. For us, it's very repetitive, right? Like what we do week to week it's very standardized. Similar customers, so you're not switching customer, you're not switching products. It's just that is set up in Excel, right? You just plug in the unknowns, and it gets in the system very quickly. So
I want to get into the weeds on this one because I'm very interested in this scenario. So I think you talked about orders not being kind of typical orders. I think what you meant is that you're not really selling to end customers. You're selling to like distributors or grocery stores, stuff like that. They're big orders. You have less orders, but there's more on them. Is that right?
yeah, pretty much everything we do is full truckloads. So those are at it's like 20,000 dozens per truck. So yeah, we're selling to grocery stores and or food service distributors.
So yeah, so it's not as big of a deal. Someone might be like, "Oh, you have an order coming through email? Come on, this is 2024." But it's not a huge volume of them, so it's not really painful. But you're growing, and so here's where I love this scenario. I personally am like, man, there's got to be an easy entryway for what I would consider manufacturers. Now, you're not using the manufacturing edition, but you're producing a product to like to have a better ordering process. Have you looked at all at having as super lightweight e-commerce functionality as possible, just for the sake of getting the data stored in a consistent format? You could still use Velixo to bring it in after that, but just a way to get rid of email and PDFs. Have you looked at any, like it's almost like just a smart sheet, just any way to get the data in a consistent structure with a light front end? Or do people just not want to do that? They want to send in an email.
We haven't looked at it, right? I mean, we launched in October, right? So we had to kind of pick our battles. But yeah, no, just hearing you say that, right? I mean, it would be great if there was a website they could just ping and it would, we accept the order, right? That would be an ideal case. Now, yeah, SBS, some of the larger customers we deal with are going the EDI route, so that is familiar. But yeah, I mean, even smart sheet or something else where they could enter it. Now, sure, there's going to be one or two customers that are, kind of old school, if you will, and they just want to go to they want to be on their production floor and scribble it on a piece of paper and they scan it into us, and we'll probably have that. But there is the bulk of them I could see. Yeah, they would love it because if they hit a website and you create that interaction, right, they get the confirmation. All of that stuff becomes synced up where it's kind of manual today, if you will.
Velixo was our way of emulating a lightweight e-commerce site. We do it on our side instead of customer facing, but it was a great way for us to bulk load a bunch of sales orders or a bunch of lines at the same time.
Yeah. No, I love it. I love Excel as middleware because I think it makes the world run, right? You don't even need a fancy API solution. And that's where I'm like, yeah, you got live, you did what you needed to do. And I just feel like it's a logical next step to not even try to hook up a big commerce or whatever using the Acumatica Commerce Edition and API stuff. Just take another step in that direction. Find some web solution that's completely disconnected, and then you can still use Excel in the middle, right? But I like also what you said. You're still going to have the old school customers who want to just scribble it on a piece of paper and send it in. So we're not talking about completely replacing it, but if you can whittle it down so that now you have the three, you have the large customers via EDI, you have the old school ones still doing it through email, but the more you can put that middle piece in there where you've got people going to a website and keying it in, I feel like you just set yourself up better for the future, both in terms of your back office, which to me isn't the bigger deal. To me, the bigger deal is generationally. I think younger people want to put it in on a website, and I think it just makes them more likely to do business with you. But that's just my take. I don't know. I'm really excited about that scenario, but I don't know. Maybe it's not a priority for you guys.
No, it's well, I just think we have larger priorities. We need to kind of figure out that's in front of us. We're setting up. I mean, right now, I'm kind of looking forward. Pricing, right? We're egg pricing is fairly unique. We have a published daily market, and then we also have some different configurations on when they price, so that the Acumatica stuff is the standard out of the box is not a great fit for us. So that's one that we're, I guess, trying to wrestle with or tackle as far as how do we make this a little more efficient. And we're just starting with a custom database, get the market information into the system, and that'll help from a reporting and kind of looking at how we do our business, but how we make our pricing kind of, Sage 100, we manually priced every single order, if you can imagine that.
Ouch. No, I would love to dig into this one. So, all right, forget the e-commerce thing. Tim's excitement.
It's a great idea.
Pricing. Okay, yeah, pricing's huge. So, if I, yeah, because it sounds like you price according to market, so your cost really has nothing to do with it. So you pull in market pricing. Tell me how that works. You said, can it come in daily, weekly, and where does it come from?
So there is a third party that, essentially publishes the egg market. Anybody, I guess if you're familiar with commodity stuff, right, there's a group that's establishing that price. The other challenge is that the Acumatica standard functionality is off the order date, but we have customers that like to either go off of the ship date if they're picking up the order or the delivery date. We do have some that go off of order date, but with it being a daily market, they want to get kind of closer to when they're going to utilize those eggs. So delivery date is fairly common. So yeah, that presents some challenges. And then when you're pricing off of a market, sometimes that people like create, they want to use the previous Thursday or the Thursday of that week. So there's some challenges that go into kind of just.
And they get to choose. They get to choose what day they're priced, as long as it's consistent from week to week.
Yeah, so that would kind of be established up front in the agreement that this is.
Okay. Oh, yeah. So they don't get a pick on a week by week what the best day was. Okay. All right. Yeah. So it's in their agreement. Those contracts, those legal contracts, those annoying lawyers, right? They like to create problems for us technical people. This is interesting to me. So first, I want to ask on the data side that you get from the third party. It comes in daily, sounds like, and does it come in a clean format?
Yeah, today right now we're just downloading that from a portal, if you will.
But actually, it's just a number, isn't it? I'm thinking there's like multiple items involved. It's just one price because that applies to all your eggs. Is that right?
Well, it's one price, but there's multiple regions and there's multiple sizes, so it ends up being I don't know what it is.
40 egg prices, if you will.
Okay, depending on how much you're selling and where it's shipping to?
The size of the egg and where it's shipping to, yeah. So there'll be a
interesting. Okay. And then, all right, so you're downloading that data, but it's in a somewhat clean format. So you get that, and where do you put it now? I'm curious.
Right now, we're managing a lot of that in Excel. And then it's just, for different customers spitting out what the price should be for that day. And, some customers aren't necessarily changing their price daily. They'll lock in for a week, right? But yeah, that's kind of how we're handling it. And we can upload these customer price sheets and, for that time period. And that's helped in Acumatica versus the Sage 100, how we're handling things. And that's not necessarily a Sage 100. I think it's more just how we were set up, our process was set up. But yeah, looking at, do you get all of that into Acumatica, but then if you got a new agreement or a different scenario, then are we able to, go in there and manipulate that, or is it more of a programming thing? So right now we have control of it, right?
Yeah.
It's up and down, or we want to run we have some extra supplies, so we want to run a feature or promotion, right, where we want to adjust price for a few weeks. It's very easy for us to do this, right, and kind of help our business versus getting too system heavy, and then you can't really program everything into that world, or you end up
sure, especially with pricing, right? Yeah,
a manual type of scenario where did you achieve what you wanted to? But
we utilize sales price worksheets a lot. We do a lot of write-backs via Felixo. One of the shortcomings we think is that we manipulate a lot of the customer order dates to be previous Thursday or the delivery date so that we can get pricing correct on the invoices. We do a lot of order date manipulation at time of order entry or at time of invoicing or at time of shipment. And it's kind of annoying because you lose that initial order date. I don't think it's a good practice to be manipulating that, but that's our way of getting the pricing to flow correctly.
Yeah, so you change the date and then you have it recalculate the pricing on the order. Is that what you're doing?
Yeah, that's right.
Gotcha. Oh no,
Yeah,
yeah, this is. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, if that was an option to go off of delivery date and or ship date, or that would be helpful, which is what we're exploring with our reseller right now, just to do I don't know if that's a light customization or not, to be able to kind of identify how this customer is priced off of. That would be a small step, or maybe a big step, right? Just because it creates some confusion when we are manipulating that order date.
Yeah, so I have a couple thoughts on this. So I guess my first question is that so right now you're manipulating the order dates, recalculating the pricing. Is there a certain time of day when that happens, or does that have to happen throughout the day? Or is it like, okay, we know everything's locked up for the day before we create our shipments, we're going to do the pricing thing that we do at this time?
I like this. Like the market is published. The East Coast stuff is typically published around noon, and the West Coast stuff is around 3 p.m. if Eastern time, right? So if you're talking about like when we recalculate prices, it's kind of driven off of when that's published. The order date itself, we typically will manipulate when we get the order, right? So if we know it needs to be priced off of, we know the delivery date of the order. So if we subtract a day or subtract 2 days so that the pricing is going to calculate out correctly, that's typically when we manipulate the order date. Does that make sense?
What about the shipping side of it? I guess that's what I was really curious about. When are the trucks going out? Are they going out throughout the day or a certain point?
They ship throughout the day.
So if they ship in the morning before that pricing comes out, they're going to get the pricing before the pricing comes out. If they ship at 4 p.m. or 5 p.m., they might get a different price, just depending on when the truck went out.
No, typically the pricing would be dictated a lot of times in that case on delivery date. So I don't know if I'm explaining this very well. The time of day that the truck ships does not really matter.
Okay.
If it is shipping today, March 22nd, if that market comes out at 12 o'clock Eastern time, whether it shipped at 7 a.m. or 4 p.m., they're going to get March 22nd's price.
On the invoice, but not on the order.
We don't put prices on any of our orders per se.
So you hold the order. Is it that you don't do the shipment until it's actually delivered and then you do the order, like in terms of committing the order?
Yeah, inside the system, we would do all of our shipping the day after.
Got it. Okay, so that's why that SO versus IN really mattered to you. Got it. Because that's that extra step where the IN just goes right to the invoice. The SO has you do some extra stuff that you don't want to do.
Correct.
Got it. Okay. So you're really treating your order like an invoice in that you're doing it after the thing has been delivered. And that's why you can recalculate the pricing there. So I have two thoughts on that. One is I'll put a link on the episode page, episode 113. I talked to Mark from Rockton Pricing Management. It's a third-party ISV that basically can handle all sorts of crazy pricing scenarios. So interesting to look at their solution. And then they write it back to Acumatica. So it's sort of like instead of you having to do your own customization and maintain that from version to version, you'd be doing the ISV route. I have no idea what pricing is like on their pricing product. But that's an idea. Another idea would be to try to attack it even with a low code, no code way. Just because that's the area I delve into more, so I know it better. But potentially you could do an import scenario. So you could do like a combination of Velixo, which is handling all the pricing logic. Although I guess you're doing that now, aren't you? Then you're writing it. Well, tell me why you're not writing it back directly. It sounds like you're using Velixo to write back to the pricing sheets. Is there a reason why you're not putting more intelligence into the Velixo file to have it do the entire pricing? Because you could load the market stuff into Velixo and have it do everything.
That is essentially what we do in our price worksheets is we load the market information into there, and then based on the customer or the item or however that pricing structure is set up, we do the back end stuff in Excel, and we write it back via Velixo into the system.
Yeah, I think the price worksheets is just a way of tracking like when we've changed or convenient, but
Oh,
yeah,
good point. Yeah, you want kind of a record of when things change. Yeah, gotcha. Okay.
but we are open to exploring that, and I think we actively have that identified as an opportunity for improvement and kind of map it out and look at it. Right when you're in implementation, it's like, hey, this works. We're get up and running, and there was other things we were just trying to figure out to make it work, and got through the holidays and first couple of months of cleaning things up and addressing things that were on the finance side, et cetera. Now we're finally at a point where we can kind of look at some potential projects, small things to work on, and pricing is definitely one we want to improve or revise or whatever you want to say. Makes
sense. Yeah, I see why that one would be a priority. What other things do you have on that list? I'm curious of priorities.
So I mentioned that we don't have the farms kind of integrated into the system a whole lot. We've explored having them just be able to like log in and use some stuff. So that is a priority for us, right? Kind of giving them some of the insight or tools with the system. Now there's some challenges that come with that, right? There's a decent amount of turnover. There's multiple individuals if that could potentially interface with the system. I think user logins it's probably fine and okay, but yeah, it's they're not the most technology friendly, if you will, right? Typos and all that other stuff that go into the system is it more heartburn than what it's worth. But yeah, that's kind of on our radar. I think we're interested in looking at lot tracking. There's some regulation that comes in 2026 that the FDA wants to have much more visibility into lot tracking. So how we accomplish that is it's kind of upfront exploratory, whether is that some scanning or case labels, that type of functionality that we would have to take a look at. And I think the last one that I have on here is just learning more about kind of Power BI or any of those data visualization tools. I think the dashboards are great, and Velixo doing stuff in Excel is nice as well. But I do think there's some untapped on kind of Power BI that maybe some needed functionality for us. But yeah, that's kind of the short list of where we are now.
Yeah, on the Power BI point, I've learned that with this place here in Columbus, the food distributor. It's a super low margin industry, but there's a lot of data. And so Power BI plays well there when you're looking at trying to get insights out of large data sets. I'm curious though, going back to your farms point, trying to get logins and stuff, is it mainly for the sake of getting them information, or are you actually looking for them to key information back into the system?
I think the initial step would be for them just to get information, right? That's orders or open orders, a lot of that stuff. So we do have some, unique cases where, I guess probably 95% of the time we ship orders in full. But something comes up, you have an issue where you load one less pallet on a truck. Currently, they're kind of filling that paperwork out, and the office is updating that shipped quantity, right? Are those small things that the farm could do? We talked about the pricing challenge, right? To me, it would be great if they could create the shipment, and then we'd have kind of an updated visibility in the office on, hey, this order shipped. Whereas today, we kind of find out at the end of the day, or we have to give them a call and see if something shipped or not. Gotcha. So it was more of hey, the office, we're very familiar. We're front end. We're doing all of this work today. Let's launch. Let's get into the system. Like rather than try to add on a bunch of stuff. And I say a bunch of stuff. Add on another potentially 25, 30 employees, and it kind of could sour the launch of the ERP, right? So let's
Yep.
get with people that are using it today and get it in and get it working well, and then go try to potentially figure out how to improve the farm operation, which it is. We got, like I said, we have the owner operator too, right? So you got some individuals there you got to buy in, and some people think differently about how to run and utilize their farm. So we do have some kind of dynamics there.
Makes sense. Yeah, I was asking because I was wondering if it sounds like it is more than reporting, right? Because they are truly part of the operation. They're the ones actually doing the shipping. So it does make sense. You need to get them into the system. I was wondering because sometimes these things can be solved 40, 50% of the pain just by sending them daily reports, scheduling reports out of Acumatica to go out to them in Excel or PDF or something. And maybe you could start there. But yeah, getting them in they're part of the process. So that does make a lot of sense. And that's where Acumatica shines, right? Because you can add as many people as you want to the system and you're not going to pay more for it.
We have relied heavily on, for anybody that's new to the system, if you look at our evolution, very email driven, kind of step by step by step, and a very iterative process. Whereas now we're using a lot of business events and automation schedules to send those reports out. It's still via email on the business event side, a lot of the information, but at least it's letting the system do that work versus someone having to manually go into a folder structure, grab a PDF and email it to the farm. So we're letting the system do a lot of that heavy lifting. Now, I think the next step of it is to let the farm just, there's an alert in the system where they have to go out to the system and see if there's anything that they need to pull down. So we're still in a push scenario, if you will, where we'd like to get them to more of they can go pull their own information, their own reports. They can pull whatever they want out of the system whenever it's convenient for them versus waiting for an email.
Love it. Yeah, that's exactly the angle I was thinking of, using business event. Sounds like you're already doing it. And yeah, when I said low code, no code earlier on pricing, I was thinking business events in my head. And I don't know to what extent you're using them, but I've been using them more and more. Even though I get in from a reporting angle, I've been using them more and more to then drive action off of it, drive an import scenario to go do something. And yeah, you can really do a lot. Then there's the whole workflow engine that you can get into, which I personally am like really close to jumping into that, but not quite. And then of course there's full blown customization. So I look at it in 3 stages. There's business events with import scenarios where you can drive a lot of custom workflow yourself. Even if you bring people onto the system, they don't even have to go to a regular screen. You could have them just work off of their shipments, check off the ones they're shipping. You could have a total, that way you really control what they see, so it's less confusing. And then from there, you can go to the workflow engine, which I haven't gotten into myself yet. What I don't like about that is you have to publish customization projects. So you can't do it during the day. I like being able to just work right live in the system, but then you have that and then you have full blown customization. So yeah, come back to business events. I love working with those because they're so nimble and you can really do a lot in terms of driving action, not just driving reporting.
We would ditto a lot of that comment.
Yeah, I think we've definitely, that's been the first, whatever this has been, 5 months, is setting up business events and getting them to work well. I think based on the conversation, it sounds like we need to dig a little deeper. I don't think we've really used them for many import scenarios. And then I guess while we're on the business event, like it does seem like the field change. Sometimes events fire, sometimes they don't. Like I don't know if we're missing something there, but I mean we eventually figure it out after a few hours or days messing with it, come back to it. But is there something we're missing on like the field change potentially?
I've experienced that myself, and I am not I feel like I haven't hit the bottom of exploration on that. I have a few challenges with it. One is the more you do, like on the trigger, I think it's, oh, remind me, is it trigger by condition? No, I can't remember the setting on the business event, but it's basically the one that will catch it instantaneously, right? That's the one you're
Trigger,
talking about.
trigger by record change, maybe.
Record change, yeah. So then now you know if a specific field changed, right? And what it changed from, what it changed to. Logically, your brain's like, yes, this is exactly what I want. I want to do this all the time. But
Yeah.
performance wise, it's another story. So one is how reliable is it? I think that's your point. And two is how heavily taxing is it on the system, especially as you roll through months and months of data. That's something I still struggle with personally.
Well, it's good to know it's not just us.
Yeah, and I think have you hit the second part of it, the performance part, where it's slowing things down?
We have not noticed that. At least we don't think we've noticed that.
Yeah, so not yet. So keep that one in the back of your mind. You're noticing the reliability challenge. Then there's also, and so what I'm more hesitant to do the trigger by record change these days, unless it's really needed, like an order confirmation. You want the customer to get it right when it comes in. All right, I'll do that. But for other things, I try to do more scheduling where, all right, let's have this happen once an hour or something like that. And then the challenge there becomes, how do we know now what we need to process? Because we now only need to process the last hour's worth, right? So you have to then think through how you design the GI. But yeah, I'm totally with you there. That's I love that we can do it. It's just not. Sometimes you have to pick your poison. Which path am I going to take?
It's funny that you say that because that's exactly what I was going to say is we've kind of, you can spend hours and days on the record change trigger by, and it seems like sometimes it'll work perfectly and it takes 5 minutes to set up your business event. The next time it will take you 2 days and you can't figure it out. So I've been going down the path of just trying to get the trigger by schedule and figuring out all the nuances to get that. You want the right data at the right time, and the next time it runs, you want it to make sure it's the right set of data to process. But the trigger by schedule seems like it's a lot more reliable and easier to use.
Yeah, I don't know if it's helpful to talk about an example. Like one that we do, like if an order's canceled, right? We also have freight providers or carriers that we may potentially utilize. Like they're not part of our office, but we also notify our office, but then we notify the third party freight carrier. And that was one we went through, and it's just like you go back and forth, like simple record change, right? Like, hey, this order's canceled. We want to, if this is who we have on the load, we want to just shoot them an email to notify them. But yeah, I mean, you walk through that process and figure it out.
Yeah, it can be maddening sometimes.
And I'm not the expert here. I like to refer to myself as a professional learner. So I was just throwing out my experience. It's very validating to me to hear that you're having the same experience. I'm not like, this is how it is. I'm more like, this is what I've noticed. And now that you've noticed the same thing, I feel even more like, oh, yeah, that's scheduled. So tell me on that specific example, the cancel order, are you scheduling that now, or is it still triggered by record change?
We abandoned that canceled order status.
Because it wasn't reliable? Like it just wouldn't always go out?
It would not. Sometimes it would work, sometimes it would not. And we could never figure out why. I don't know exactly how we are tracking. Now, there is a systematic way that we are tracking canceled orders now. I don't know if it's through a GI. But yeah, it seemed like, okay, if this record changed, the business event would fire for some things. But when the field changed to being a canceled order, it just didn't work.
Interesting. And the cancel order, all right. I love weeds. Let's get this is super weed on this one. When you're canceling the order, are you on the order screen, sales order screen, and doing the cancel order action on the top?
Correct. Yes.
Okay, so I'm super getting into the weeds. I'm pulling up Acumatica real quick here. So write this one down. I just noticed this one recently, but I don't remember exactly where it was. So give me a second to pull it up. And it's going to depend on what version you are on. Remind me, was it 23R1 or R2, or you're not completely sure?
R1.
R1. So this might not be an R1. I don't know because I noticed this in an R2 version. But if you do a, I think you might have to do record change for this. Yeah. Actually, I haven't used it yet. I just noticed it. So I'm assuming it has to be record change, but I don't know for sure. But what you would do is you would do the business event, and we're talking about an email here. So you're then going to set up a email subscriber, which is going to go onto the email templates. It's a notification screen. And on that screen, on the attached reports tab, so email templates, attached reports tab, where you set up the report you're going to attach, there's a field in R2. Don't know if it's new there or if it's also in R1 called attach report open by action. And I think in there, you can select an action that someone performed. Now, it might only work with trigger by record change. I don't know. But I have been interested to look at that myself because I don't know even for sure if it's only related to the business event. But take a look at that email template screen, attach reports tab, attach report open by action. There might be some hook in there that might even be outside of business events that will allow you to fire a report when someone clicks on an action on a screen. And
That's
then it might be
interesting.
more reliable. I don't know. Try it and find out.
Yeah, well, it just makes me want to ask, how do you think about upgrades, right? Like, but we're fairly new here, but we've seen some features like that'd be nice to have, but haven't really pulled the trigger to upgrade. Is there a quick process like mostly reliable? Just go do it or test it out. Like it's fairly straightforward and easy. Stay up to date.
I think it's a it depends situation, right? Because I focus on reporting, I don't deal with upgrades as heavily. So I'm not an expert on anything, but here's an area where I'm really not an expert on, but I still have an opinion on it. My take is on upgrades in general. I like to see them once a year because I look at upgrades as being more involved than a customer wants to think them that they are. You already experienced it. You already did an upgrade. I mean, you were in the middle of your implementation, but you did one, right? And it bit you, right? And upgrades just tend to do that. They tend to surprise you sometimes. And so my take is I like seeing people create what I call an upgrade script, which is just a Word document full of a ton of things that you go in and test. I want you to go in and put in an order, use this specific customer, go use these specific items. I want you to add 3 lines. I want you to put in this specific quantity. You get real specific and you do the work to put that in a Word document so that your next upgrade, it's easier. And you put in, I want to put in this information and I'm expecting this result back. Because if you don't do that work, and it's a lot of work to put that together, and I view it as being something that evolves upgrade to upgrade, right? You're not going to catch everything, but you put in the basics and then you get bit on something. And so you add that to your script for next time to test that. And you keep doing that upgrade after upgrade. But because it's that, I see it as a more involved process. I look at it as once a year. I don't look at it as, hey, let's just be bleeding edge. But that's my philosophy. Other people are more tolerant of being bleeding edge.
It's good advice.
I appreciate that.
But yeah, this is not just get a new functionality. This is also like, are all of the business events that I'm creating, which are really light customizations. It's like, manufacturing edition versus kits. It's still customization. It's just, like kits are still manufacturing, but those could still break too, right? So all the things you do, you have to make sure they're still working.
Yeah.
Well, I did not expect to be able to get into this many fun weeds on someone who just went live in October. You guys you're running a mile a minute here.
It's really been a lot of fun. I mean, for anybody that's thinking about going from a Sage 100 system and Just to be able to get information in and out, we think it's a great product. It certainly made our office a lot more efficient. I don't know if that's because it's the software itself or because it's just forced change and you're looking at things different. But, it does seem like a much more modern UI, and to get information in and out, it can happen very quickly. And one thing too, the Acumatica learning, the help functionality out there and the documentation is a phenomenal resource. We relied on that heavily throughout our implementation process. Just not that we self-taught ourselves a whole lot, but when you wanted to get into the weeds on something, we found it very helpful.
I will ditto that. I think that most ERP products, help is a total afterthought and it doesn't change much version to version. Acumatica, I love that I think they have a knowledge base somewhere, but I think their philosophy is put the knowledge base in the help. And they keep updating that from version to version. And I really like that approach. Yeah, I'll totally ditto that.
Yeah, no, I just, my comment on that, I guess, is I felt like the ERP was sort of holding back, our office or our business. And I no longer feel that way, right? I feel like a tool set's there that we can go make some changes on the business side and how we do things. So, yeah, now whether that's Acumatica relative to the other alternatives, we're not going to spend a whole lot of time chasing that down at this point. But yeah, no, we've got a tool that can unlock some things and run through.
Awesome. Yeah, and Mitch, your title on LinkedIn is marketing. I was not expecting you to talk to the level of detail that you did. It sounds like just the nature of being in a smaller business, you all do a little bit of everything, it sounds like.
Yeah, well, I don't know how much you look there, but I have mechanical engineering undergrad, right, which I spent some time doing that stuff and just decided that sitting at a desk wasn't for me and went into kind of marketing, business development, and came into this business 5 years ago, and it's kind of there was older generation that were kind of involved in setting it up and getting it off the ground, and felt like bringing some more of a technology view to it it's been helpful, and look forward to future challenges. There's plenty we have going on, so no, I appreciate the comment. It's been it's been fun getting into the system, and it's always nice when you figure something out, right? Whether it's an inquiry or allocation or any reporting, and it's like you can do it in the system, and it works, and it helps out the team. So
yeah, when you were talking earlier about the owner operator model and essentially your outsourced back office for farms, I think, and you reminded me of a customer that Acumatica had on stage 2 or 3 years ago at the summit. And it was a very similar model. And I've heard this story a number of times where I think Acumatica just fits really well for that type of situation. And I think a lot of it has to do with the way pricing is and that you don't pay for every new user. So you're incentivized, create a good back office intellectual property in Acumatica, and then adding farms onto the front end, you pay no extra for that. So I think I think you got a good solution for that model. I've heard that in a number of other cases where you're outsourced back office and you've got a good tool to reach out to your customers with.
Yeah, that's encouraging, right? That was a little confusing, right? When you're going into, how the system is priced and what you're going to pay for it, right? You're looking at some other alternatives. It's like, 10 users that we have in the office and doing those comparisons. But yeah, that was appealing, right? Where we could, roll this out and ramp up and then add some users and not end up in a completely different spot from just a cost of the system standpoint.
I can't remember that other company's name. They were in New York, but I'll drop a link to them on the episode page when this publishes, ogforums.com/episode 131. But thank you both, Mitch and Kurt, for coming on today. I love getting into the weeds. To me, this is the most helpful stuff that it's just not out there, right? There's a lot of polished marketing material, but I love being able to talk details. So thank you both for that enjoyable conversation.
Thank you.
Likewise. Thanks for having us on. And look forward to shaking your hand at some point. You're just in Columbus, right? or maybe even at the conference next year, we'll sit down and get into the weeds a little more.
All right. Well, that's it for now. We'll catch you on the next episode of ogforums.com Real Talk. Thanks for listening, and take care.